was born in Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka. That's where we are on the world map, right under India. My family moved to Dubai when I was 4 years old, and I grew up there my whole life. But my hometown is in Jaffna, the northern province of this country. My mom and dad grew up in a small town of Velvetithure. And every summer, I'd visit my grandparents, uncles, and aunts, and we'd stay in my granddad's house. I used to eagerly look forward to these summers every single year. But on the year of 2009, I didn't go back home. It was the year that around 70,000 of my people were killed by the Sri Lankan government. And this day was dubbed as the Mullivaikkal Massacre. A little backstory about Sri Lanka. 74% of the population are Sinhalese, the dominant ethnic group. And 11% are Sri Lankan Tamils. I'm a part of the latter ethnic minority group. The Sinhalese are usually Buddhist, and the Tamils are Hindus, displaying significant linguistic and religious divisions. During the year of 1983 to 2009, there was a civil war that happened between the government, which was dominated by the Sinhalese, and against the LTTE, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, a separatist group that fought for the independent Tamil state in the northern and eastern regions of Sri Lanka. The war officially began after a day of riots that happened in Colombo, where they targeted Tamils. And it went on for a little under 3 decades. It ended on May 2009, when the Sri Lankan government announced that they had killed the LTTE leader. During the years of early years of conflict, coverage was relatively limited, with reports focusing mostly on the northern regions of the country. But as the fighting intensified, and particularly after the government launched a major military attack in 2008, coverage increased significantly. But it was too late. It was too late because there was thousands of civilians dead. And many of them were innocent men, women, and children, victims of a massive military genocide. And around 2 million Tamil civilians were displaced as a result of these 3 decades of war. Most of us escaped to countries such as Canada, UK, and other European nations, and are still living there. I want to show a picture of my family when we visited a home for the disabled and maimed. And right there is a little girl named Anushka, who's sitting on the wheelchair. I remember the day when I went to meet Anushka's mother, who's the woman holding her hand. I asked her what grade of school was she studying at, and her mother said, "Oh, Anushka can't go to school, dear. She has a mental disability and she can't communicate the way that we do. Anushka has a cerebral paralysis, and this was because her mom when pregnant, was hit by shrapnel from a shell launched by the Sri Lankan government forces." War affects both sides equally, and I deeply empathize with all those affected by it. But sometimes it feels like certain groups, certain communities, certain races are affected more, especially the ones that are oppressed. Now, you may be thinking, oh, why didn't the international world or community intervene? That's because the United Nations failed to act strategically in a timely manner to protect the civilians, and they lost a 10-month window of opportunity to evacuate these civilians to safer areas. This went on for another 14 years. There was no accountability held against the Sri Lankan government for their war crimes. And why is that? Because there was no international pressure on these decision makers. When I was doing more research about this topic, I came across an article written by Dr. Martin Binder. And he quotes, "The role of the media plays an important role. The media plays an important role in the life of the council, often producing international pressure as action to address man-made disasters." This proves that the widespread public focus adds pressure to decision makers to act strategically due to the fear of inaction, due to the fear of reputational damage. There are countless other stories like Anushka's, but their stories never reached the mainstream media. And I'd always asked myself this question: what could have been done differently to bring these stories to light? Well, there is social media. It's quite instrumental, right? Quite instrumental in raising awareness. Nowadays, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram dominate as the source of news, ranging from talk show hosts giving the daily news to short-form content reels that discuss heavy, hot topics posted by popular influencers. The easy access to these platforms, along with the anonymity and distance provided by social media, creates a space where people can effortlessly express their opinions. And mobilize towards a cause. To remain aware or to stay woke. The term "stay woke," it originated from Erykah Badu's 2008 song, Master Teacher, as a call to remain vigilant and aware about the current systemic injustice and oppression. But let's take that same definition, and where I said people can effortlessly share their true opinion and mobilize anyone around any cause. That can quickly create an environment where people are quick to call out and cancel those who express views and opinions that don't align with the current progressive narrative. This is the current state of woke culture. It's become a toxic phrase that is used in situations far from its original intent and purposes. And I believe that the continued use of this phrase can erode free speech and, most importantly, bring focus away from the pressing issues that the world needs to address. Let's talk about the problem with social media. Or problems. There's a lack of nuance, widespread spread of misinformation, and performative activism. This is, I think, in my opinion, the biggest problem. And cancel culture. I find the views expressed by Hannah Cross quite perceptive of the current state of the internet. Whenever images are shared on social media, whenever they are shared with an emotive language, they are often anchored to one political, religious, or corporate stance, putting them in this tiny box, leaving no room for any other ideas or viewpoints, making it monosemous. Definitely had to look this word up. It means having only one meaning. This creates a culture of promoting a divisive. This creates a culture where people care more about being right than finding common ground. And in the pursuit of clicks and engagement, we can find that often there's a widespread of misinformation that can occur. And this can lead to further amplification of conspiracy theories and false narratives. In November 2021, there was an online trend that blew up on Instagram, where for resharing a post or story of your pet can lead to a tree being planted in return. Sounds really noble, doesn't it? But no, it was a scam. It was a complete scam where it was orchestrated by a 23-year-old CS major from Florida to sell necklaces at a high markup. The reason why the scam became so successful was because of performance activism coupled with spread of misinformation. The task of reposting a story or a post is seemingly simple and is often intended for follower growth and social capital rather than actually supporting a cause. It requires the lowest amount of engagement to show contribution. Posting a hashtag or sharing a video can raise awareness, but it doesn't create actual change on the ground. Let's talk about hashtag Black Lives Matter, triggered by the George Floyd tragedy. BLM's online presence had an insane positive impact, but it was riddled with performative activism. Blackout Tuesday is the epitome of performative activism. What started as a movement to amplify Black voices, creators, videos, and educational information on Instagram was drowned out by 24 million Black Square posts. In my opinion, performative activism is worse than silence because it takes attention away from the real conversations and issues. And finally, we have cancel culture, which is enabled by social media. An individual is targeted and publicly shamed for expressing their opinion or engaging in behavior that is deemed unacceptable. This leads to a culture of fear and self-censorship. If the international community gave as much attention to the Tamil community of Sri Lanka as they're giving to celebrities being canceled over 10-year-old tweets, they could have helped more people. But that wasn't the case. Around the many numerous posts that have been shared, there are some advantages to woke culture. They do have their perks. The immense support and sympathy shown by the world towards the Ukrainians helped them gain international coverage. It is one of the more adequate and helpful media coverage that enabled them to gain as much support from the international world as they did. Another great example is Iran. Despite discrimination, Iranian women are highly educated and have broken many barriers in professional fields. They have pushed for discriminatory laws to be abolished, such as the dress code and sexual harassment, and achieving some reforms. But they have also faced arrests, torture, imprisonment, and even death sentences. As grim as this situation was, and still is, the protests that happened in the Western world helped them gain international awareness and support. This is where we've seen a responsible use of woke culture and online social media platforms to create awareness and support for a righteous cause. Now, woke culture remains still a huge question mark. It stemmed originally as a call to remain aware and vigilant about systemic racism and oppression. But it's not always logical to be that way, right? You can't always show your true opinion to your audience. Sometimes it's important to express your progressive nature in certain situations to avoid unnecessary conflict and debate. But if your outrage and support is selective to certain communities, certain races, and groups, then you're not really staying awoke. You're being ignorant towards the real crises that need desperate attention. So I'd like to leave you all with a simple reminder and some simple steps to create more nuanced spaces that encourage people with diverse perspectives to be involved in. First, everybody has the freedom to believe in what they want. There are multiple truths to every single social justice issue. Nothing is black or white. There are a lot of gray areas. Being respectful and civilized during intense, heated topics is important. And finally, focus on creating meaningful impact within your reach. Social media companies need to take more responsibilities. They need to take more responsibility in promoting accurate information as content over sensational and divisive ones. Ultimately, it's up to us to tackle these issues plaguing the world right now. Actually showing up to a protest is much harder than posting a hashtag, or donating real time and effort to a cause is much harder than clicking a button. But we can do it. It's the time for action, not distraction. Thank you.